It's the Hogsketeers.
Yeah, banjo intro. All right. You know what that sound means. It means you're back on the Hogsty, and boy, are we glad to have you. My name is Sean Conti. Robbie Duncan's with me.
How's it going, everybody?
Steve Thomas is with me.
Hello, how are you?
Kelly Worrell, not with us today, but we'll be back next week. Alex Zeese is up in Boston this week, celebrating his brother's graduation from architecture school, with honors, I may add, so big props to the Zeeses. Congratulations. But we will soldier on in the meantime without these guys. We got a cool show for you. We're going to take a look around the NFL with some headlines. We're going to do another position group breakdown. If you recall from last week, we went over wide receivers. This week, we're slated to go over kickers and punters, so a little position group breakdown for you. Then Steve's going to take us through a GM spotlight. We're going to look into the world of the New York Giants. What have they been doing this offseason, and what is their front office situation looking like? And then we're going to finish up looking at a group of people that have gotten a free pass on the Hogsty so far, and that just doesn't sit right with me. I'm, of course, talking about our new coaches, specifically defensive coordinator, defensive line, and offensive line, and defensive backs coach. We're going to go over them all, but those are the four we're going to hit. So, very exciting stuff. We'll get right into it. First things first. Headlines-wise, a couple things going on in the NFL world this week. First of all, big shout-out to Robert Griffin and his wife, Rebecca Liddycote, welcoming their baby girl, Reese Griffin, into the world this week. Congratulations, Bobby.
Another RG in the family.
RG4 in the house. Exactly.
I don't think she would appreciate being called RG4, but
yeah, maybe that's not
another story.
Yeah. With good things anymore. Yeah. So, anyways, good. Congratulations, Robert. Happy for you. Furthermore, and slightly less happy news, Ryan Kerrigan this week went through arthroscopic knee surgery. Probably not anything serious. Details seem to be a little sparse, but he is expected to miss a couple OTAs. I don't know. Any thoughts on that? I guess arthroscopic knee surgery could kind of mean a couple different things, right?
It can be kind of tricky sometimes. You know, it's minor, but it can also lead to more things. I believe the Nationals player Anthony Rendon kind of has been suffering some setbacks due to a knee scoping, but you never know. I think he'll just be keeping it easy, keeping the weight off of it, and just rehabbing a little bit. I don't think it's too much to worry about, but it is a little concerning.
Well, we didn't hear about anything torn or any injuries per se. Let's hope that it's just a cleanup. He's cleaning up loose cartilage or something like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's hope, because we need you, Kerrigan. Suck it up.
We definitely need you.
Next on the list, Hard Knocks. We're going to talk about Hard Knocks again because there are so many freaking conflicting reports that are flying around. Some people are tweeting that it's going to happen for the Redskins, others saying it's definitely not. It looks like the final word on this is we still don't know, but the three teams in contention for this would be the Bills, always with Rex Ryan, the Redskins, and the Texans, who I think it sounds like seem to be the most likely candidates. I won't watch. What do you guys think?
I think the Texans would be a pretty boring team to watch. They're going to spotlight J.J. Watt, who everybody loves, but they don't have a lot of personalities. I think, the people of Houston would like it, obviously, but I don't know how excited HBO would be about the Texans.
Right. See, you mentioned that we're not going to be in it, but the conflicting thing is just the other day, Gil Brandt from, I think he's with NFL.com, tweeted that he heard that the Redskins are going to be the show. But earlier that day as well, John Keim said it's not going to happen. So it's kind of a confusing thing going on right now.
You know what?
We're not sure exactly what's going to happen.
If you ask me, I think HBO would want the Redskins to be there because there's so much drama and stupidity that goes on every year. But I think the Redskins would be wise to not do it, and I think Scott McLuhan probably would not want the team to do it. But, if HBO could televise the Robert Griffin, last chance season, I think they would eat that up.
Exactly.
Yeah,
totally.
And the inner fan in me wants to see it just because I want to see everything that goes on in the inside of the team and how the players act with each other, interact and communicate, and how their relationships are with their coaches, what everybody's like behind the microphone that when they're talking to the media. So, I mean, in that sense, I would like to see it, but yeah, in overall scheme of things, it would be a nightmare for this team.
I'm going to root for Hard Knocks with J.J. Watt myself.
You guys are killing me. I want to see it for the Redskins. I know I said it last week, but why not? Tear the roof off this thing and let me get the down and dirty insight into what the hell's going on.
No, Sean. We lost our roof like a decade ago.
True.
Okay, we're trying to build a roof. We don't need to tear off the foundation of what we've started. And I'm just saying, I'm sick to death of Rex Ryan. I'm tired of the guy. He's a big buffoon. I want nothing to do with having to sit through another season of Rex Ryan. So I'm definitely rooting for the J.J. Watt show.
Yeah. Why not?
All right, well, Hard Knocks aside, there's one more headline that's definitely of note this week, and that would be the rule change. So probably you've heard about this already, but the NFL, the owners approved the competition committee's proposal to change rules around extra points. So they'll no longer be kicked from the 2, but from the 15, and teams. Defenses that are guarding against this have the opportunity to score 2 points if they are able to return a failed 2-point conversion or a blocked extra point attempt for a touchdown. So they actually can score those 2 points. Last year, the rule was it would be dead upon a failed try. So I don't know. I don't think this is going to have a huge impact on game strategy. You might see a couple more 2-point conversion attempts, but what do you guys think?
Yeah, that'd be fine with me. More 2-point conversions makes it more interesting. I don't remember if this is affected or not, but a defense should be able to return it back if they get an interception or if there's a fumble or something. That makes it more of an actual football play. It always seemed kind of anticlimactic to me when you say a quarterback threw a pick in the end zone on a 2-point conversion. It's like, oh, well, that's it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that what the deal is, is if the defender returns the ball to their end zone, it's 2 points for the defender. Wherein if the defender catches the ball in the end zone and gets tackled in the end zone, then it's a safety, a 1-point safety. That's what I read this morning. Meaning a 1-point safety for the kicking team. The kicking team muffs the kick. The defender intercepts the kick in the end zone, but gets tackled. It's a 1-point safety. Whereas if there's an interception and he runs it all the way back to the opposing end zone, then it's a 2-point play for the team that was defending the kick. I think that's the rule.
Well, so it's higher stakes kicks. I kind of like that.
I don't. I'm a traditionalist. What is wrong with the extra point? Kick the extra point. I like it. I don't like. Let's not change things just to change it. It sounds kind of gimmicky to me. I don't know. I would like to keep it the same.
Well, I'll tell you one thing to be concerned about. Are we sure that Kai Forbath can kick the ball 15 yards, guys?
He can kick it 15 yards.
From that range, yeah. But if you go any farther out, it'd be a little shaky. I'm not sure about that.
His percentage goes off the cliff at 16 yards
I think
out.
Mrs. Forbath's calling into the show right now. She has something to say to you, Sean.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Forbath. I love Cobra Kai. He's my boy. Well, what a great segue. We wanted to give you another little taste of the Hogsketeers position group breakdown this week. Like I mentioned earlier, kickers and punters are under the microscope. I think we're also going to talk a little bit about returners. Robbie, guide us through this. What's the situation right now with kicking and punting on the Washington Redskins?
Well, Tress Way is the uncontested punter.
Uncontested.
Yeah, he's not going to be. I don't see anybody coming in that's going to take away from that. Looking at the roster, he's the only one they have. I mean, they may bring in somebody off the streets to compete or something, but Tressway had a really good season for us, got snubbed for the Pro Bowl, in my opinion.
Yeah,
yes,
agreed.
Along with him in the kickers is Nick Sundberg, the long snapper. He's been here for a while. I mean, he's pretty much a mainstay here. Kicking-wise, we have a little competition with Kai Forbath. We have Ty Long from UAB, the University of Alabama, Birmingham, who I got a couple stats from him. He was 16 for 19 for field goals made in 2011, his freshman year. Sophomore year, he was 14 for 17. Junior year, 16 out of 24, not a very good year. 13 for 17 his senior year. And his longest kick in that career was 54 yards. So, I mean, it looks like he has a little bit of a leg to him, but it's a rookie. Who knows if he'll really beat out Kai Forbath. I mean, we had a rookie here last year that couldn't do it. It was inconsistent. So who knows what's going to happen with that?
Listen, well, first of all, in Trustway, he stabilized a punting position that has been a revolving door for the Redskins for seemingly forever. I think we lucked out in finding a guy like that. I hope the Redskins aren't dumb enough to let him go or anything anytime in the near future, because he was a great punter, and I totally agree that he was snubbed for the Pro Bowl. He had the misfortune of being on a lousy team, with little visibility, and he was a rookie. But on Forbath, it just amazes me that for some reason, people don't like Kai Forbath. Let me give you some stats, because I was bored when we were preparing for the show here. I dug up the career stats on Kai Forbath, Mark Mosley, Chip Lohmiller, and Sean Sweesham, all of whom are former Redskins kickers. Mark Mosley being, Ring of Honor type, and Chip Lohmiller being maybe the other guy in the last 20 years that I think we all collectively thought was, our good kickers. So here we go. Kai Forbath, 40 games played, 4 seasons with the Redskins, entering his 5th season. His career field goal percentage, 88.1%. 20 to 29 yards, he's at 94% with 17 of 18. He's only missed 1. And I think that was a block, if I recall. 30 to 39 yards, he's at 90%. 18 for 20 total, sorry. 40 to 49 yards, he is at 88% with 22 of 25, and I think at least one of those was a block too. Over 50 yards, he's only 2 for 4, 50%. So that's Kai Forbath in 4 years, 40 games played. Now let's go to Mark Mosley, shall we? Mark Mosley, 15 years in the NFL, 12 years with the Redskins. He was a 65.6% kicker. Believe it or not, I thought it would have been higher. He is at 85% for 20 to 29 yards, 82 of 96. He's at 75% for under 40 yards, 53% under 50 yards, and 29% for over 50 yards at 12 of 42. That was career. Chip Lohmiller. Chip Lohmiller spent 9 years in the NFL, 7 years with the Redskins. He was a career 71.8% kicker. Under 30 yards, he was at 92%, 73 of 79 kicks. Under 40 yards, 77%. Under 50 yards, he was at 53% with 41 of 77. And over 50 yards, he's a 39% kicker. Sean Sweesham, in comparison, he's a 10-year vet now. Can you guys believe that? It seems like yesterday he was with us.
That's
Been
great.
around
Yeah,
for
he
ages.
spent 2 whole seasons with the Redskins and then parts of 2 others because we brought him in the middle of the year, and then they cut him in the middle of the year, if I recall, after he missed a game-winning kick, I think.
He Billy Cundiff.
anyway.
Billy Cundiffed.
Yeah, there you go. And no, I
Billy
did not
Cundiff.
bother with Billy Cundiff's stats for this
That's
thing.
okay.
Sorry, Billy. Sean is an 84.1% kicker. He has played 170 games, 49 with the Redskins. He was at 95% under 30 yards, 79 of 83. He's still with the Steelers, by the way, so he's still an active player.
Mm-hmm.
Under 40 yards, he's at 83%. Under 50 yards, he's at 83%. And over 50 yards, he's at 31%. So let's review, shall we? In summary, of our 4 kickers I mentioned, Kai Forbath, Mark Mosley, Chip Lohmiller, Sean Sweesham, our very own Kai Forbath has the highest career field goal percentage at 88.1%. He is 1 percentage point below Sweesham for under 30 yards, and he leads every other kicker in every other category. So, and I realize he's played less games, certainly than Mosley and Lohmiller, and he's a few games less with the Redskins than Sean Sweesham, and he's a whole bunch of seasons behind him. So the sample size isn't as big.
Right.
But if he keeps up the pace he's going to be the best. He's on pace to be the best kicker, most accurate kicker the Redskins have ever had in the modern era.
Wow.
So think about that for a minute when you guys complain that he has trouble making a 53-yard field goal, okay? For me, or his kickoffs are a little short, just remember this. It's one statement. Kai Forbath is thus far the most accurate kicker the Redskins have had in the modern era.
Yep. I totally hear you on that. Seems like his problem isn't accuracy; it's leg strength. But even if you watch his field goals, they're all low. That's why, I mean, I think he only had, how many did you say he had blocked? Not many.
Well, I didn't have stats. That was just me talking off the top of my head.
It's gotta
I
be like
remember
2 or
at
3
least
blocks.
I remember at least 2. I think it's at least 2, maybe 3 blocks, and one of those was the offensive line's fault, and I think one of them might have been his fault, if I recall.
I think it was Chris Jesser that got it blocked.
Yeah, there you
it
go.
always, which no surprise there. It always seems like that his kicks are low though. Like he has gotten away with some squeakers in the past. I've noticed like the defense's hands are always like 2 inches from the ball when he kicks it. It super makes me nervous. But accuracy, like you said, not a problem. So maybe it's a trade-off.
You know, it's enough said. I'm okay with it. You know, if an above 50-yard kick is a crapshoot anyway. Let's hope we're never in that position. Right. You know, and yeah, the sample size is not statistically relevant with only 4 kicks attempted, but he is 50%. He has made 2 of 4 of those. You know, it's not like he just can't kick over that distance. And for those of you who've seen the Redskins play live, you know, he does line up and kick over 50 yards in warm-ups, and he does make some of them. In warm-ups.
But he's got that. He's got those steel-toed cleats on. That's why.
Well, maybe so. You know, I'm a Forbath fan. You know,
me too.
If the man can't kick the ball in the end zone on a kickoff, let Tressway try it. For goodness sakes, you know, maybe he can do better. You know, but I have a real hard time with letting Kai Forbath go. You know, when he's
I mean, it certainly took him forever to sign his contract with us, didn't it? Like, he held out for a while.
But it's not that he held out. We gave him he's a restricted free agent, and so they gave him the restricted free agent tender, which is a 1-year contract, and he didn't sign it for a while, but it's not a holdout. You know, his agent obviously shopped him around and see if he could, you know, rope somebody in for a multi-year contract would be my guess, and that didn't happen, so he signed his tender. But it's not accurate to say he was a holdout, because that's really not.
Considering those, sorry to jump over. Considering those stats, do you think? I mean, it's kind of surprising he wouldn't have garnered more attention, don't you think? I mean, those are pretty decent stats. I mean, do you think it's the leg strength that's holding him back? Is that what's going on?
You know, who knows? You know, there's kickers are a dime a dozen. You know, we're on a bad team. You know, he's on a bad team. You know, he didn't have a lot of visibility. You know, it's hard to say. I don't know.
Yeah, and with him, you shouldn't expect any more leg strength to come out of him. That's pretty much through the window now since he's been here. If anything, what he needs to work on for kickoffs is just the ball placement. You know, put it in a good spot where the kickoff coverage team can get to it and actually get to the guy in time. If it's not going to go far, kick it up higher so there's more hang time so they can get there quicker.
Right. That's a stat that I want to see. How many Redskins kickoffs last year were returned and how many were fair caught?
You know,
that's what I want to know.
Pull those stats. I have to think that we were far below average last year on that. You think?
Far below average.
Yeah.
But again, has anybody tried Tressway? Can Tressway do kickoffs? It's not the craziest thing in the world. There's other teams that have used punters.
No, punters do it all the time sometimes.
Yeah, he can certainly boot it. I'd be willing to give him a go. Do we want to talk about, or let's see, we talked about one of the new guys. Did we get another guy too?
I want to say they brought somebody to camp, as a kicker.
I forget. I think he was a real.
But since not one of us can remember who he is, I'm going to say he's not a high-profile player.
Yeah, looking at the roster, only kickers that I see on here is Tai Long and Kai. So I guess it's just going to be between the two of them.
I mean, I'm happy Tai Long's getting this shot, but a kicker who's been at 88% over 4 years, and then you're going to come in and try to unseat him, you'd have to be pretty darn impressive to win that battle. I mean, even the Redskins used to bring in competition for Mark Mosley there toward the end of his run, and he always beat him out because he's got a history,
Yeah.
And I think Kai is kind of developing that too.
Yeah, so I'm looking more at the roster. Since we're talking special teams, I'll go ahead and mention our kick returners and punt returners. Last year, that was Andre Roberts' job. He did a average to below average job there, better than I guess people we've had before. Looking at his average kick return average, he was averaging 23.7 yards, and for punt returns, he averaged 7.4, which is on the top 20 list. He's number 19, so really he was mid to low on that. On that, so Darren
Just
Sproles was
below
leading
average.
everybody with that in punt returns. He had 13 yards per punt return, and on his kickoffs he wasn't as high. The lead average for that was Adam Jones, who averaged 31.3 yards per kickoff.
Yeah, but what
return.
but what did our returners average in 2013 though? Andre Roberts
Right.
was if he's average was an improvement.
In 2013,
Yeah.
I don't have that.
I know you
just
don't have
looked
it.
at
It was
last
just a
year and what
rhetorical
we're
question.
looking
I
at
mean,
for this year.
It was a rhetorical question, because I think we all know our special teams were just abysmal in 2013.
Yeah.
Right.
Like not just abysmal, like worst in NFL history, kind of abysmal. If you look up the stats, I think that's kind of where we were. So, is Andre Roberts good, quote unquote? No, I think, Robbie, you've proven that, but he's an improvement over what we had, in years past.
And the other thing that doesn't get noticed with that, I mean, yes, our returners haven't been dynamic or a big playmaker, but the blocking for kick return and punt return has been really poor as well. I mean, yeah, he's not making plays and making things happen on his own, but he's not getting a lot of help either at the same time.
That's what I was going to say. It's almost unfair to judge these guys considering who's doing the blocking for them. It's so hard to grade Redskins kick return talent for that reason.
Yep.
And you mentioned abysmally bad 2013. Wasn't much better the next year. So,
well, we lost Adam Hayward last year halfway through.
That was brutal.
Yeah, he was the special teams captain. I have to wonder how much of a difference his presence would have made for the whole year.
Yeah, that's true. And, Andre's it's not a given this year that he'll be the returner at all. I mean, we drafted someone that's going to compete with him at both spots, at his slot receiver spot and returner with Jamison Crowder from Duke. So he's shown that he can be a pretty dynamic returner. He's very agile, very shifty. He can make some really quick cuts. So it's not going to be an easy training camp.
Well, I mentioned this last week, I think. If we go back and you remember what happened, Andre Roberts obviously was brought in here to be the number 2 receiver. And once Deshaun Jackson showed up, that was the point in time that we started to read in the press that Andre Roberts wanted to try kickoffs. It was obvious that not obvious, but it seems to me that what happened was that once Roberts saw his job disappear, he tried to make himself more valuable to the team by volunteering to do kickoffs. And because, Sean and I could have done better than our 2013 receiving teams, and that's really saying something. Andre Roberts got the job, and he was successful. He made himself more valuable to the team. But I think if Deshaun Jackson hadn't been here, we would have seen Chris Thompson or somebody else be the returner probably. They wouldn't have risked a starting receiver being the kick returner, I think.
Right. Who was that we had? God, I forget.
The Apostle Lake Seastrunk, perhaps?
Oh, that's his name, right. That would have been interesting, too.
A fan favorite from preseason, Lake Seastrunk, who, as it turns out, has done absolutely nothing in the NFL.
Yeah, he just got waived by the Titans, and he's a free agent again. So yeah, he's not looking good for him.
I think he needs to learn.
Get him back.
I think he needs to learn the Canadian national anthem.
He might be learning that sooner rather
he
than
and Michael
later.
Sam can go up there and play in Toronto.
Yeah. Well, if we're done kind of looking at punters and kickers, we can move on. Any final thoughts on this position group?
I'm sorry to cut you off, Robbie. My final thoughts are that if it seems to me it's the blocking is the issue, really. Our block. Robbie, hit on it. If our blocking improves, our kickoff returns are going to improve. It's not like if you go back and at least watching it live. I haven't gone back to watch a single clip of kickoff returns because that would just be painful. But watching it live, at least, does not look like our returners are missing a lane, missing a cutback necessarily. Andre was pretty good in running north-south. He ran and he got sort of as far as he could go. He's not going to make any spectacular plays, and he's not going to outrun anybody. But he didn't miss any holes. He didn't pull a Brandon Banks and turn immediately to his left and run straight out of bounds. He kind of did what he could do. So it really makes me wonder that unless you had a Devin Hester in his prime, whether anybody was going to do particularly well with our special teams this year. That was just my thought.
Right.
Yeah, and my final thought is, even last year's draft plus this year's draft, we've been drafting guys that are special teams, specialists, I guess the best way to say it. It's definitely been a focus the past 2 years, and it didn't improve last year, but the focus is there. A lot of these guys that McLuhan drafted are going to be really competing on special teams and making a difference there. So I think we can expect a better special teams group overall. We got this Tai Long guy competing with Kai, which, it probably won't even happen that he beat him out, but competition is always a good thing, and it brings out the best in everybody. So expect just a little bit more competitive nature to the whole group, and everybody taking pride in that. So that's.
Hey, Robbie, did you ever play special teams ever in your football career?
Only in field goal and punt return. No, not punt return. Sorry, it was a punt.
But you were always on the line.
Yeah, in punt, our punt formation was the 3-man shield style, where you have your front line, and then you got 3 guys in the back that are big bodies that are the last line of defense for the people that get let through. The front guys, they pick out their guy and block them, and there's always going to be like 3 or 4 guys that come through. So we were the ones that held off those rush dudes and gave the punter his time to get his punt off.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason I ask is it's always seemed to me that special teams plays are a little bit more aggressive, maybe, for lack of a better term. The special teamers are a little crazy. In my mediocre high school career, I remember our wedge buster was this absolutely just nuts linebacker who just loved going down there and getting the stuffing kicked out of him, on the wedge breaking thing.
Yeah.
Is a special teams kick return, punt return, does that have just a little bit different attitude and feel than a normal offensive or defensive play, or am I just wrong?
No, yeah, for sure. You have to have this kind of crazy mentality and take a lot of pride in doing it, because if you don't enjoy it or don't take pride in it and have a passion for it, it's gonna suck. Like running down on kickoff and being a wedge buster. I mean it's not fun. And if you don't like it and don't put the energy into it, you're not gonna have a good time.
Yeah, my experience is I was the safety valve on the edge.
Yeah.
Because my coaches didn't trust me to actually be a wedge buster or make any tackles. So my sole job was to make sure nobody got outside of me, basically. That's my experience, on it.
Yeah.
But Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, I didn't enjoy special teams either, especially when I was filled in at the punt formation and being that shield guy. Because the dudes that get through the front line and come at you, it's like a free charge. You don't get any momentum at them. You're just basically standing there and waiting for them to come knock the snot out of you. And it was not fun. We had a couple guys that got a concussion from it.
You only have to block them a couple seconds, so right? It's
yeah,
less
they
of a
just
time.
come and smack you, and the ball would pretty much be gone by then. But that smack was not fun.
So it begs the question, if they can get more of a pressure situation on a punt than on a regular play, why don't they do the same thing for a regular defensive rush on a pass play?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Well, what you basically just said is it's a more aggressive rush, for lack of a better term, on a punt play. If they get better results on a rush for a punt, why can't you do the same thing on a regular defensive play?
It's just the way the punt formation is set up. They have in the NFL, they all do the same formation where they're all lined up, kind of like a field goal formation, and they just take 2 steps back and block their guy. But with the one that we were doing, you'd get a little bit more pressure because you have guys running free, but it's still set up where the punter wouldn't feel that pressure because he's lined up way farther from us than you think.
Okay, so it's just a formation then that causes.
Yeah,
that.
It's a formation thing.
Okay, now let's talk about the swinging gate. No, I'm just kidding. Let's not.
Yeah, let's not.
It wasn't so much that I thought the first version of the swinging gate was that bad. It's that when you're dumb enough to try it again after the timeout, It's just inconceivable. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to give anybody nightmares.
That was an all-time low, in my opinion.
Yeah. We're having Vietnam like flashbacks.
It's post-traumatic stress.
There it is again.
Yeah. Well, let's all hope that Ben Kotwicka and Hayward can inspire some good play out of special teams this year.
Ben Kotwicka, was he the guy that was in the Army?
Yeah.
I believe so, right?
Because wasn't
Yes,
it Kotwicka
he-
Special Forces or something like that? Wasn't that the nickname?
Right.
That's his theme for the special teams. Yeah.
Well, it was his theme until
right.
they became decidedly average, and then we stopped hearing about the Special Forces moniker.
You called them the special
Right.
farces.
Because we don't want to compare a downright average team to our wonderful U.S. Special Forces, I don't think.
No, that's a disservice. That was a position group breakdown on kickers and punters. Make sure you tune in to last week's episode if you want to hear about our rundown on wide receivers. But moving on from that, I'm a little excited about this next part. We're going to take a look into enemy territory right now. Steve's going to take us through the situation with the Giants. What's been going on this offseason and what's their front office situation?
All right.
Steve, what the hell?
Okay,
Let's
this
do
is
it.
a segment we have titled the GM Spotlight. We're going to do this periodically off and on throughout the offseason. I don't know if we'll get through all 32 teams or not, but we're going to get through certainly the teams that are most important to the Redskins. And so I thought I'd start with the Giants because, quite honestly, I'm sick and tired of Chip Kelly, and it's never good when we're talking about Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. So we're going to start with the Giants. The way the Giants front office set up is the Apostle John Mara, who all Redskin fans love. Yeah, his middle initial is not F, but I think we know what F stands for when it comes to Mara. He is the team president. He inherited the position from his daddy, Wellington Mara. Yeah, so he worked for everything he got, clearly. But the GM is an interesting guy. Jerry Reese is the GM. He has been the GM since January of 2007. He is a 1984 grad of the University of Tennessee at Martin, which is not the Vols. That is UT Knoxville, I believe. So that is not the University of Tennessee that's the national championship contender. He was a coach at University of Tennessee Martin until 1993. He was hired as a scout for the Giants in 94, and he's been with the Giants ever since. He got promoted to be the director of player personnel in 2004, and then when he was made the GM in January of 2007, he was actually the third African-American GM that the NFL had ever had, believe it or not. Ozzie Newsome was one, and then Rick Smith with the Texans was the other. And since then, there's been at least one more in Martin Mayhew with Detroit, former Redskin Martin Mayhew. There may be more, I don't know. But at the time, he was only the third African-American GM. And just as a side tangent, when you have a league that is significantly African-American players, and then yet you only have 3 African-American GMs, that sort of tells you the mentality of the owners for years and years and years and years. But be that as it may, so this is going to be his 8th season coming up as the GM of the Giants. Some of the players he's drafted and developed since he's been there, a long list: Eli Manning, Jason Pierre-Paul, O.C. Umenyiora, Justin Tuck, Super Bowl hero David Tyree, if you remember, was the player who caught the ball in his helmet in the Super Bowl to win the Super Bowl.
That's right.
Yeah, it really was.
It's a
he
classic
got cut a couple
play.
years later, so I think that's probably his.
Where is he now?
It was certainly his lifetime highlight there. Former Redskin Barry Cofield was drafted by Jerry Reese, Ahmad Bradshaw, Matthias Kiwanuka, Justin Pugh, who's the right tackle, and then, of course, Odell Beckham Jr. He found Victor Cruz. He has found a whole lot of people over the years and done a very good job in stocking the Giants, which is why that the Giants have been solidly good for the most part over the years. This offseason has been a fairly quiet offseason for the Giants. It's maybe highlighted, but what they didn't do more so than what they did do. Eli Manning, Jason Pierre-Paul, Prince Amukamura, Ruben Randall, all of these guys are in the last years of their deal with the Giants, and they didn't re-sign any of them. So all of them are going to come up as free agents next year, and so the Giants will have to figure out what they're going to do with the team. So I think that tells us that next offseason for the Giants is going to be an active year for them. Starting with Eli, what do they do with Eli? what is he? Maybe 10, 11, 12-year vet at this point. His past couple years have not been as successful as years past. So the question is, what is Jerry Reese going to do with Eli and all those other players? But who they did sign, they signed Shane Vereen from the Patriots, running back, 5'9", 205. Had 96 carries, 391 yards, 4.1 yards per carry. Signed him to a 3-year, $12.35 million contract. Presumably he will be a backup running back, third down guy, I would assume. Robbie, what do you know about Shane Vereen?
He was pretty much the same role with New England. He's a good, decent playmaker. I think it was a solid pickup for them. I mean, they still have Rashad Jennings, who's going to get a lot of the carries, but Shane Vereen will also get his touches. He's pretty shifty. Not elite speed or anything, but he's shifty and can make people miss.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to scare the Redskins, but he certainly, I think, makes the Giants better. That's the way I looked at it.
The Jennings has had some injury problems too, so Vereen's a nice safety valve there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
They signed J.T. Thomas, linebacker from the Jaguars, 6'1", 230, to a 3-year, $12 million contract. Far be it from me to question Jerry Reese, but if the Jaguars let you go, it makes me wonder, the level of his talent. You know anything about J.T. Thomas, Robbie? I'm sandbagging you with this one, I know, but you know anything off the top of your head? Zero. See, that tells us right there that it's a questionable pick. If not one of us knows anything about J.T. Thomas except the Jaguars, of all teams, refused to sign him, somehow I don't think our offensive line is going to be scared from J.T. Thomas, but you never know. There's one feel-good story that happened with the Giants this year. They re-signed Mark Herzlich, the linebacker, Boston College, 2011. If everybody remembers, this is the player who got cancer and missed a year at Boston College. And you remember, and there was a big story about what was going to happen to him. Was a team going to give him a shot? The Giants signed him. I think he might have been an undrafted free agent even because of his cancer, and
wow.
Everybody thought that was wonderful, and he made the team, and then we all promptly forgot about him. As it turns out, he's been a backup linebacker with the Giants all this time, to the point where Jerry Reese re-signed him. So congratulations to Mark Herzlich. It's always good to see somebody beat cancer. The big thing that it looks like the Giant fans and the Giant blogs and writers and whatnot have complained about this year is that they have ignored their cornerback depth. If you look at their roster, it's a whole bunch of no-names at cornerback. And so the Giant fan base has wondered what exactly Jerry Reese is going to do to help them at corner.
And they also lost both of their safeties, didn't they?
Yeah, I believe they did.
They drafted 2, though.
Yeah, they drafted Landon Collins, but they lost both their starting safeties, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, they were older, but they were starters.
Yeah, you have to think that Landon Collins is going to be the starting free safety going forward for him. I would
Absolutely. Best safety in the draft.
So, overall impression, let me back up. That was the offseason for the Giants in a nutshell. Not much happened. They've got a bunch of players in their last year. They've ignored cornerback. They added a running back. They added a linebacker, couple linebackers. Overall impression, he's been there a long time. The Mara family has owned the team a long time. Tom Coughlin has been a coach a long time.
For a long time.
And if you look at their drafts and what Jerry Reese has done, he's consistently added D-line and O-line. Every year he adds somebody. Even if they don't need it, if I recall, everybody wondered what the heck they were doing by drafting Jason Pierre-Paul and Osi Umenyiora, because it seemed like those guys were a duplication of effort. And as it turns out, it's actually worked out pretty well for him. I think Reese is the type of guy who has a philosophy of drafting big, tough offensive and defensive linemen. He knows he needs to keep adding to it. He wants to build from within. They don't do flashy moves. Raise your hand if you remember the last time the Giants signed a big free agent. Can't remember one, right? He's obviously a good evaluator of talent. Victor Cruz came out of nowhere to just take the league by barnstorming. It seems like Jerry Reese is Scott McLuhan reborn to a certain extent. It seems like they have the same. They have the same philosophy. except that the Giants have had stability all these years. They've had the same coach, the same GM, working on the same philosophy for 7-8 years now. It is no surprise that they've been good that long. I think the Giants are what the Redskins are shooting to be in 4 or 5 years. That's my impression of what the Giants have done. It's a stark contrast with what has happened to our team over the past, 3 years. The GM for the Giants has been a former college football player and career scout, and he's been there with his same team for 8 years. Meanwhile, we had a bug-eyed idiot as our GM who didn't know what he was doing. We had a guy who was a businessman and a salary cap man be our GM, and we had a narcissist in there who, while a career football guy, was very, very stubborn and is not known for his drafts outside of running backs. And so that's what we've had, while the Giants have had the same thing, same philosophy every single year. They're conservative, they know what they're doing, and they bring in big, tough football players. It sounds very familiar about what we have heard out of the Redskins this offseason. Anybody have any thoughts?
Yeah, a final thing to add to what's happened their offseason, they just lost their left tackle, Beatty, who tore his pec, I believe. He's going to be out for pretty much the whole season. It'll be late by the time he gets back.
Good news alert.
Yeah, good news for the Redskins and our D-line pass rushers. So they brought in that Eric Flowers guy to play right tackle or guard, whichever.
And you knew they wanted Scherf.
Yeah, they did. And they took one step forward and then like 3 steps back by losing.
What do you think of Eric Flowers, Robbie?
That's something good to look for us.
What do you think of Eric Flowers, Robbie?
Yeah, like I said a couple times ago, he has a very strong player, very powerful, but technique is very flawed. He's not very athletic. So I think he'd be best at guard for that, but I think some people say he played right tackle. If he can be coached up, then yeah, sure. But I think they'd be best at putting him at guard and adding the beef there. But they really wanted Brandon Scherf and were pissed that we took him, so they had to go with the next best guy.
Well, you know what? Good. Well, I think that maybe bode well for Ryan Kerrigan and company off the left edge then, or our right edge, their left edge.
It's about time something boded well.
Exactly.
Well, awesome. Thank you for that, Steve. And that's a perfect pivot from looking at sort of the Giants front office situation and their coaching situation too a little bit to ours. Let's roll up our sleeves and get into the new Redskins coaches this year. Again, these guys have gotten a free pass on the Hogsketeers so far. I don't even think we've mentioned Joe Barry's name. So let's find out who is this man behind the mask, this enigma known as Joe Barry. Turns out this guy's he's actually been coaching since 1994. He's been coaching for a long time. Some in college, some in the pros. His longest stint was in Tampa. There's that Tampa connection. From 2001 to 2006, he was their linebackers coach. He had some success there and was scooped up as the defensive coordinator for Detroit in 2007 and 2008, and that is what we know the most about Joe Barry, is the abysmally poor, historically poor 0-16 Detroit Lions team that he was the defensive coordinator for. Talk a little bit more about that team in a minute, but he bounced around a little bit after that. He went back to Tampa for a year as a linebackers coach. He coached in college for a year after that, and then most recently he spent the last 4 years in San Diego as their linebackers coach. Just a quick word, because again, what we know about Joe Barry is this horrible situation that happened in Detroit a few years back. I just wanted to say, if you look into that team, only player that's still playing is Corey Redding. Everybody else on that defense was out of the league, I think, within like 1 or 2 years of playing on that team. Arguably, he's coming into a situation with better players, and that is saying a lot coming into Washington. So, I don't know. Hopefully, Robbie, you can tell us a little bit more about his strategy stuff. I've heard a lot of different stuff thrown around. He's a shoot-the-gap, 3-4 type of guy. What's the deal? Do you know much about his philosophy? Yeah, that's pretty much what he's expecting the defense to be, is high energy, fly around the football field, attack, and we're going to be in a base 3-4 most of the time, but that's only for going to be for the first 2 snaps. But he was talking about the other day with I think it was on ESPN 980 or maybe 106.7, I don't remember, but he was talking about how the myth that a 3-4 team is in the 3-4
the entire time is false. Most of the time they're in the 4-3, nickel, sub packages, that kind of thing. So really 3-4 is just going to be our first down, maybe second down, depending on the down and distance, run stopping formation. But he obviously had some troubles.
Though? Is that the way we run it, or is that really the way generally 3-4 teams are operating these days?
I think that's generally what he was talking about with how 3-4s are, but I think it obviously was a little bit more of a focus on how he plans on doing it.
Right.
But obviously when he was with the Lions, they were a very bad team. You mentioned, I think a lot of that too. Just talking about the Lions situation, then was a lot of it was a product of their horrible GM and Matt Millen. He did not do them any favors in that situation either. But you have to hope that he's kind of learned from the past and kind of gotten better as a coach and figuring out how to best to put the defense out there and to make them execute and call good plays. So yeah, I think hopefully that is what's going to happen. He's learned from his past and ready to have a better future. Along with him, we also have a couple new coaches, Rob Aki, I don't know how to pronounce it. He's their defensive line coach. We also have, away from the defense, we have Bill Callahan, who's our new offensive line coach, and a lot of high hopes with him. A lot of people say he's been kind of spearheading everything with the running game. We also have Perry Fewell.
Fewell, I think.
He came from the Giants, was their defensive coordinator.
That's right, a name we know well, and Callahan.
Yep, they both came from division rivals and are now helping our cause with that. He's replacing Raheem Morris, who is very energetic, very player-friendly coach, and hopefully brings a different perspective for that. Because I don't know, maybe too much of a player coach is not a good thing in my opinion. You want them to hold the players a little bit more accountable. We also, yeah, go ahead.
Well, listen. First of all, on Joe Barry, talk is cheap. Okay, we've heard Jim Haslett say, it's going to be a more aggressive defense where they're going to fly around, and we've heard the same thing year in and year out. And so,
that's true.
Color me skeptical. I'm sorry, but I'll wait to see it. The fan base was really unhappy about Joe Barry. Obviously, born out largely of the 0-16. Debacle with the Detroit Lions. And I agree with you, Robbie, in that the talent level in Detroit was not good, and that had to have a big part in it. But it did seem like there were a lot of other, at least via resume, better qualified candidates than Joe Barry. So I think he's got a lot to. I think he's got
Wade
a lot
Phillips included.
Yeah, Wade Phillips. I think he's got a lot to prove with the Redskins fan base. And if things go bad from the start, I think it's going to get ugly. But from a technical standpoint, Robbie, is he going to be a one-gap 3-4 guy or a two-gap 3-4
As I understand, it's one gap. Yeah, I think they're taking away the need to control two gaps. I think he just wants them to have their assignment, their one gap to control and just attack it and dominate that spot. I think the players are going to appreciate that more. There's not as much complexity to their scheme. But we've kind of heard that, like you said, we've kind of heard this stuff before. So I don't know. Hopefully it's going to, they're going to be walking the walk instead of just talking it. You know what I mean?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong here, but when you're talking about a one gap versus a two gap scheme, I would think that would allow players to be more aggressive in a pass rush and in run defense, right? Because it seems to me that, and correct me if I'm wrong again, but a two gap, it's sort of a read and react thing, right? Because you can't pick one gap or another. You have to control both. And so the idea behind a one gap 3-4 system would be to have a more aggressive approach to defense, right?
Yeah, and if you look back at our old film, our D line, our DNs and nose guard, many of the time were in it looked like an offensive line stance with two hands down.
Yeah,
it's very with a low. They had their butt down, their head up. It was more, back on their heels and reading it. Now they can actually get in the real D line stance, the 3-point, low stance with their head in the dirt. And attack instead of just which way is the lineman going to go, and then reacting to control that gap. So I think they're going to like that a lot more. They can really fire off the ball and not have to think the whole time. So in that sense, I think that would be a slight improvement, at least in the speed of our defense.
Yeah. Now if you can talk a little bit about Terrence Knighton's role in this. He looks to me to be a version of Vince Wilfork reborn, at least in body type, and he looks to me to be the classic sort of two-gap nose tackle a little bit because he's big, he's fat, he's not fast, but he's very, very strong. It looks like he's going to be able to control the center and the guard pretty well. But is that as productive in a one-gap system, having a guy like that, or is he really more of a two-gap nose guard?
Yeah, I'm not sure how the nose guard's going to work in Barry's scheme. I think with a guy like Knighton, you probably could have him control both A gaps and just work it that way. But I mean, I'd have to see, I'd have to have it like a sit down or chalk talk with him and figure that part out. But I think with a guy like Knighton, as good as he is, you probably could let him control both those gaps and let everybody else just attack one. So in that sense, yeah, I'd say go for it. But and exactly what the plan is for that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're in the meeting room, I don't think you would have any way of knowing necessarily. Don't blame me for that one. Yeah, no. But it seems like Knighton, above all else, is maybe the most versatile in terms of being able to move him between the one gap and the two gap system, I think.
And he's just so big and hard to move around. He'll definitely make things easier for the defense overall.
Is it common to do what you just said, which is have the nose guard take two gaps and then everybody else be an aggressive one gap system? Is that normal?
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. I've been coaching high school ball for the past couple of years, and that was what we had we had a really good defensive lineman, and he did exactly that. Everybody else just attacked one, and he controlled the center and the A gaps next to him. So if you got a dominant guy like Knighton, you definitely can do it.
Okay, and I'll throw a bit of a trivia question in here since we brought up Detroit. Does anybody remember what team Detroit broke its losing streak on?
Oh, don't pull that on us. We know.
It's
we know.
With me, I'm sorry, but yeah, that fell flat. On Perry Fuel, obviously the problem last year wasn't just with the players in the secondary. It's that the players didn't know where the heck they were supposed to be in the zone system. I'm hoping that Fuel, if we don't have a ton more talent on the field, maybe that he will be a good enough coach to ensure that they are in the right place and in the right spot on the field. That alone ought to be a tremendous improvement.
Right. Right. Let's talk about Fuel. Yeah, so he actually is a name that we all Redskins fans know pretty well, coming from New York for the last 5 years as their defensive coordinator. Just wanted to throw out there, I crunched the numbers on this. 3 of his 5 years in New York were 3 of the most historically poor years on defense in New York Giants team history. To give you an example, 2011 they were ranked 27th, 2006 25, and 2005, though that was their. Was that their? No. 2011 was their Super Bowl year, so they were ranked 27th the year they won the Super Bowl, so he was a little bit excused by that. But again, 2005, 2006, 2011, 3 of his 5 years there, they were historically bad as a defense. Yeah. So just want to throw that out there. Obviously, he's replacing Raheem Morris as defensive backs coach. But yeah, I think what Steve just said is totally true. It seemed like last year the name of the game was coaching. The guys didn't know where they were supposed to be. It wasn't just lack of athleticism, but lack of knowledge of where to go. Robbie, can you speak more to that?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say it seems like the issue on defense was mostly not knowing assignments, not knowing where to go, or a cornerback would try to pass off a receiver to a safety that just wasn't there, that was somewhere else. It seemed like that is a coaching issue more than a player athleticism issue. I don't know. What do you think? Yeah,
that definitely seems like a coaching issue. I mean, if a guy's doing that, he needs to be pulled off the field and replaced with someone that will do the actual assignment. I would think that Perry Fuel will do that, but I think he gets a little credit too for Prince Amukamara before he got hurt last year was having a really good season and kind of breaking out as a as a corner. So maybe he can do that same thing for Amerson, who needs to take that next step and be more consistent for us. So that, I think, that was something to look forward to, or at least hope for.
Should we move on to the offensive coaches?
Sure. We can talk about. I mean, we talked about Callahan a little bit. He obviously is replacing outgoing Chris Forster, who I think went to San Francisco. But Callahan, I believe, actually recruited Roy Halou at Nebraska, and he also played with. And obviously Halou's gone, but he also played with Niles Paul in Nebraska, so he has a little bit of a connection to the Redskins.
And Spencer Long. I would think.
And Spencer Long. Nice. Well, I don't know, Robbie. Tell us about his offensive line strategy. I mean, he has a much. It seems like he's one of those guys that's been coaching for like 30, 35 years. Obviously, most recently at the Cowboys, where not only was he offensive line coach, but he also, I think, at least for part of his time there, had play calling abilities, right?
Yeah, I think he kind of took over for the Cowboys last year, at least in the run game. And look what dividends that paid off. I mean, they were just gashing people with the running game and just moving people with that offensive line. So yeah, I think he's going to obviously bring a little bit more power to our offense. A lot of people think that we're going to be completely ditching the zone scheme, which I still think is false. I mean, yeah, we may run more power, but it's not like we didn't run power with Shanahan or with Gruden before. Maybe it was just more consistent outside zone stretch, but with him, yeah, it's going to be a mentality change with just we want to, bully you and kick your ass the whole time and move the ball, run the ball. I think if obviously they brought Callahan in for that, I would hope, because last year Gruden he'd run it every now and then just kind of abandon it and throw it. So hopefully Callahan is in his ear the entire time and say, hey, we got this guy, Alfred Morris. We need to run him till his legs fall off. We got Matt Jones now, someone that can bruise people too. So, yeah, with him, we're going to be running a little bit more power. People shouldn't be worried about what's going to happen with Darrell Young either, because with running more power, you're going to need a fullback and a lead back for that. So that's a good thing. We'll run power, some sweep, some counter. Get the linemen moving a little bit more in pulling game, and we'll still run zone. We'll run probably a little bit more inside zone than outside, but the biggest change, in my opinion, is basically the mentality of everything and just focusing more on the run game in that sense.
Sure.
Redskin fans are expecting a lot out of Callahan and his ability to improve the line. I hope he comes through. Otherwise, it's going to be a bunch of disappointed Redskin fans. Why is he so good? He's very well respected.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what he's done. He's developed talent. He's been, obviously been given some good talent to work with, but he's also developed them. Tyron Smith was a very athletic guy coming out and, had some inconsistencies, but now he's a $100 million player who's signed basically for life with Dallas, thanks to Bill Callahan. I think a lot of what's happened with them is very much on his shoulders, and I think a lot of people, Redskin fans wise, should be very excited with what he's going to bring to the team. And yet
Dallas let Callahan go for some reason.
Yeah, I think I think he was ready for the challenge. He kind of had done his service for Dallas. Kind of turned them around, and Washington gave him a call and said, "Hey, we need your services really bad. Our offensive line
need help."
Yeah, we could use a little help, just a little bit of help. And Bill Callahan is like, challenge accepted. I mean, that's obviously not what he said, but I think in a sense he saw it as a good challenge. And
it may not be what he said, but that's what that's where we are with it, though.
Oh yeah, exactly.
We have a bunch of either failed or unproven players, particularly in the interior guard situation. And if he can even bring us up to an average pass blocking team, that is going to pay huge dividends. It's that's the kind of thing that will help the team as a whole. It'll help the quarterback be better. It'll help the run game. If Callahan can improve the technique and performance of those 3 or 4 guys, I think we'll see a dramatic improvement in our offense as a whole.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, speaking of the offense as a whole, we could talk about some of these other guys, though. I think that's the main new ones. Obviously,
there is one other really good new one. A big one that people have been asking for is Matt Cavanaugh.
Yeah, right, quarterbacks coach. Yep. I was gonna say I don't know much about Matt Cavanaugh. Do you guys?
No, I mean zero. But
he came from the Bears, as I understand, and I mean
quarterbacks coach.
Yeah, and the quarterback play in Chicago wasn't that much better than what we had either. But I mean, in the sense that we actually have a coach coaching Robert and Kurt and Colt McCoy now too. Someone that's constantly in their ear can't be a bad thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
It's obvious that Jay Gruden bit off way more than he could chew and didn't realize the demands that the head coaching position was going to take. It can only help to have a dedicated quarterback coach with Robert, even if he's not that good a quarterback coach, and I don't know anything about Mr. Cavanaugh at all, really. But it's got to help. Having a guy who can sit down with him and spend 100% of his time watching the film with Griffin and, for that matter, Cousins and McCoy, that is only going to help the team, I think, for sure. So no matter who it is, it's a good thing.
Absolutely. It's sort of shocking we didn't have that presence before. Other than that, obviously, the other coaches we can run through real quick. Ben Kotwick, obviously, special teams coordinator in his second year. Sean McVay, back in his second year as offensive coordinator. Let's talk about him, actually, to wrap up in a second here. But to run through the others, Cavanaugh, we mentioned, as the quarterbacks coach. I mean, after that, you're getting into other position coaches I doubt many of us know much about. Let's see. You got to mention Chad Grimm. You got to mention Chad Grimm, by the way. Defensive quality control. I think we were going to ask you what the hell that meant, too.
Quality control coaches are they're like interns, or in the college world, it's like a GA. They basically are doing all the film cut-ups and play sheet and printing them out, and it's like all the multitasking work that a coach would do, like a high school coach would do on his own, but he handles all those other responsibilities for the coach while he does, actually watches film, evaluates players, runs the coaching drills and all that. It lets the coach and the quality control guy handle everything else.
Is Chad Grimm related to Russ? Is he the son? What is he?
Yes,
son?
He is.
I think he's a son, right?
Yep.
Hey, that's
he's the defensive quality control.
That can only be a good thing.
To
have
we love the Grimms here on the Hogsketeers.
So that can only be a good thing.
Who else we got, Robbie? I wanted to ask you about Sean McVay, but who else we got of note?
Yeah, one guy of note that's kind of been trickling in, name drop wise. He's not listed under the coach's roster here. He's a guy that's kind of floated around and offered his services to different teams. His name is Joe Kim. He's a jiu-jitsu, karate grandmaster, apparently. He's served with the Bears before when Stephen Pye was still there. He credits a lot of his stuff, how he's improved, to Joe Kim. He also was with the Chiefs and helped turn around and improve Tamba Hali and Justin Houston. I mean, Justin Houston is like the best sack master in the game right now. So if this guy comes in and adds that kind of improvement to our pass rushers, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff to look forward to.
Awesome. Let's hope. I mean, it can't hurt to have a good technique guy on the field. We got some new blood, and new technique is good as well. Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you about Sean McVay, offensive coordinator. I feel like that's the last thing I wanted to ask you about, because I seem like we don't have that much clarification on what he does on this team. Has his role been clarified this offseason at all? And if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, he is the offensive coordinator. I think he does a lot of the game plan stuff. I think he gives Gruden every option and every bit of information he needs for when he's calling the plays. That's the confusing thing with teams where the head coach calls the plays, but you have obviously an offensive coordinator. You never not have that position on a team. Basically, again, he just forms up the game plan. Obviously, Gruden will be part of that as well, but I think he tackles most of the design and making the plays and putting everybody in the best position to make plays and who best fits the offense that they want to run. pretty much he's his right-hand man in that regard.
All right. Well, hopefully we won't have that convoluted play calling system last year where I guess it was Gruden calling the plays to McVay, who then called them into the field, and it just seemed like plays never were getting in on time, and it was all kinds of a mess.
Yeah,
it sucked.
On McVay, he's not the offensive coordinator.
Right,
okay?
right.
He may have the title, but Jay Gruden is the offensive coordinator. Jay Gruden is calling the plays. Jay Gruden is an offensive mind. I think McVay, has a good title, and I'm glad he does, but he's really the the assistant offensive coordinator, really and truly. And I guess, when we hired him as offensive coordinator, he was sort of the boy genius, a little bit. He's got a really good reputation. I would assume, look, everybody knows that I was not high on Jay Gruden, last year. But I think Jay Gruden needs to be unemployed, if you ask me.
I'm with you.
That be that as it may, if he succeeds, I hope he succeeds because that means the team will be good. But I think if he succeeds and he stays here, and as time goes on, I think Jay is going to realize more and more that he has too much to do. And I think eventually, and if he stays, you're going to see McVay being the play caller at some point. And let's hope it gets to that point. And listen, I don't want to be too negative on Jay and his staff. And, I hope he succeeds because I want the Redskins to win. And so let's hope that in 3 or 4 years we have the $20 million a year Robert Griffin, succeeding, and then Sean McVay is calling plays that causes us to score 35 points a game. Let's hope that happens. I'm skeptical, but let's hope that it happens.
Well, I agree. There's only hope. I don't know. Concluding thoughts on coaches, I think I would just say of the 4, actually there were 5, but I'm not counting Kavanaugh's quarterback's coach in this. Of the 4 new guys this year specifically, Barry, Akey, Fuel, and Callahan, it seems like 2 of them are kind of head scratchers in Barry and Akey. And then Fuel and Callahan, I at least kind of understand because they're coming from much stronger pedigrees as NFL coaches. But it seems like it's a mix of veterans that are, have a pretty high pedigree and totally random. Exactly. So, I don't know. That's my concluding thought on the coaches this year. It's sort of, I don't know. It's kind of a wash for me. Some of them seem like great choices. Some of them seem terrible.
My concluding thought is that I was excited about Perry Fuel. I think he's only going to help. Raheem Morris, nice guy, but he just wasn't cutting it results-wise. Joe Barry has a lot to prove. Listen, I hope he succeeds. I hope all the talk about aggressive defenses and everything else ends up being results on the field. I'm skeptical about him. But again, I hope he succeeds. Callahan, home run as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So, we can't get worse than Forrester. The guy didn't do a darn thing with our O-line. It's just a disaster.
That's right.
Yeah, and my conclusion is Callahan obviously is the home run hit. He's probably the best coach on our team, position-wise at least. If things kind of go out or, don't work out with Gruden, I think we have our coach in waiting with Bill Callahan. Keep your eye on that, in my opinion.
Well, I just saw a Twitter update on Callahan that he's looking to bring another offensive lineman in, last name Duncan. So,
get your jerseys today.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know a bunch about Duncan, but I think he's going to be a good addition to the team. Is that? Oh, it's Robbie.
He's
it's
a big
you.
softy. I don't know.
He's got poor arm length.
Hey, Robbie? What was your playing weight, and where are you at now?
When I was right at the end of my senior year, I was about 315. Maybe a little bit less, 312 or so. I've actually gotten down to 260, so I'm still working on that as well. Ultimate goal right now is 250, so I'm almost there.
All right.
You're about the size of Preston Smith.
I think he's got an inch or two on me though.
How tall are you?
I'm 6'4". I think he's 6'6", or maybe almost 6'6".
Maybe you can try out for a linebacker spot.
I don't have the endurance to be a linebacker, I'm afraid.
Or the mental fortitude to do it for the Redskins. All All right, well, that was that. Hopefully, you learned something about the Redskins coaches. We wanted to mention them all because, again, we haven't mentioned them much on the Hogstie yet, but that's huge, coaches. I mean, come on. So hopefully you learned a little something from there. We'll be back next time. Maybe not next time. I think we're gonna do obviously some more GM spotlights. Definitely need to look around the NFC East. So we'll be getting to that next week. We'll definitely do another position group breakdown. No word yet on which position it will be, but you'll have to tune in for it. And before we go. I don't know, guys. Anything?
I
anything
have a
big?
couple things.
Oh, give
I
it
have
to
a couple
us.
things. I mentioned this before, but I got to mention it again. We saw Letterman retire this week.
Yes.
I was so sad to see Letterman go. Yeah, hearty congratulations. It's awful to say, but I think for a period of maybe about 15 years or so, I think I saw every single Letterman episode through a combination of live and recording it and reruns. I think I literally saw every single episode for a long time. I'm going to be really sad to see him go. David Letterman is sort of, the pair of comfortable shoes that are always there. No matter what happens, you had good day, bad day. David Letterman was always there at 10:30 or 11:30, depending on your time zone. So I'm really going to be sad to see
the love he showed for impressionists and, imitators. I think he usually had once a year, like it's Impressionist Week or something like that. I always saw
he did that.
He'd bring in a guy each day, and he'd do his stuff and kind of spotlight some of these up and comers, and it's really cool stuff.
I was watching the last episode and seeing all the clips, and I realized that the humongous bulk of those clips I saw live for the first time. When they originally ran. So I was a huge fan. It's going to be sad to see him go. And you guys are Game of Thrones fans. The other thing I wanted to throw out there, you guys are huge Game of Thrones fans, both of you. I'm kind of catching up with the series a little bit.
Yeah.
Am I the only one that's been disappointed with season 5? I watched seasons 1 through 4, and it was really, really good, and I was excited about it. I haven't read the books. I'm not a fanatic, but I enjoyed the first 4 seasons. This season 5 is just starting to bore me a little bit. It's hard to say.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say they're at a spot in the books that's a bit of a lull. In fact, they're coming up on a spot in the books that I think a lot of people check out of the series because it's like you're 4.5 some books in, and it's like you've read about boiled leather for like 7,000 pages at this point. I don't know. It picks back up again. Robbie, what do you think?
Yeah, I've kind of thrown my hands in the air and said, I give up trying to say, well, that's not in the books. What the hell? Really, I'm looking at them both now as just separate mediums because everything that's going on with Sansa is completely new.
That was brutal, by the way.
Yeah, I understand it was a very bad scene. People are tired of everything. There's nothing good happening in this show right now.
Ever.
Again, Sansa's role in this show now is completely different. In the book, the character that's being married to Ramsay is a different person that's being portrayed as Arya, Sansa's sister. Her name is Jane Poole, and that wedding night scene
like a family
in the
friend,
books
basically.
is much worse. I mean, really bad. Theon or Reek in this instance is not just forced to watch, but he gets a little bit more involved in the books, and it's not much better in the books.
Well, I'm glad that scene wasn't, the scene for Game of Thrones, by Game of Thrones standards, that scene wasn't filmed in such a way that it was overly graphic, which was good.
Yeah.
Because
It was emotionally graphic.
emotionally graphic.
I understand the people's backlash about it.
They've shown a lot worse things on that show than that scene, is all my point
Exactly.
was. They've showed...
The
That's
Red
true.
Wedding was so much worse.
I agree. God, I still think about
Well,
that sometimes.
let's not forget what we saw about how Theon became
Theon
Reek in the first place. They showed really, I don't even want to describe, but Ramsay had a really gross meal at one point. We'll say it that way. That is way worse than seeing the wedding scene, I thought.
I also should mention how bad everything going on in Dorne has been. Dorne is is an embarrassment to the Game of Thrones show.
What's Dorne?
Everything going on with Jaime and Jaime Lannister and his buddy Bronn. The Sand Snakes are terrible. Not good actors there. It's just been completely uninteresting and unnecessary, in my opinion.
How many more seasons of this
But,
are they going to do? I mean, how far does the books go?
It's going to pick up. Stuff's going to change pretty soon, and some major things are going to happen that is going to catch people's attention. But moving on from that, you guys got any big Memorial Day plans? I mean, right now it's Saturday at about 12 o'clock, but obviously most people won't hear this until either Monday or Tuesday. But
I plan on watching Redskins film from now until Tuesday morning.
That's a dedicated Hogstye member.
And
right
I'm going to be anxiously studying salary cap numbers, courtesy of Spotrac.com, for the next 24 hours.
There you go. Spotrac should really be throwing us some.
But before we check out, real quick, I forgot.
Oh, go ahead.
The one other headline we sort of glazed over. The NFL is anxiously trying to get teams to LA. By the way. And what we saw this week, was that the Raiders and the Chargers may have reached some sort of tentative agreement on a potential stadium somewhere in the Los Angeles area. Obviously, it's a long way to go, but look out for that because the NFL desperately wants to tap the Los Angeles market.
Yeah,
sort
of remarkable it's taken them this long. But,
well, you know what? LA's not a good football town. Sorry, LA fans. There's too much to do there. They're not fanatics. They have the Lakers and the Dodgers, which they are fanatical about. The NFL has gotten by just fine.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect spot to end on. By the way, I have no Memorial Day plans. I'm gonna sit here. I'm gonna play GTA 5 that I just got on the computer. Robbie,
I'm gonna be playing golf.
Like actual golf or video game golf?
Real golf.
Oh, then I don't care. No, awesome. Well, yeah, we got to enjoy some of this beautiful sunshine. But,
I think I'll be playing golf too, Robbie, by the way.
Brothers in spirit. Golf spirit. Anyways, that was the Hogsty, episode 5, I think. Ooh, don't quote me on that. Yeah, episode 5, you can quote me. We'll be back with you next time with the full crew. Hopefully, Alex and Kelly will be back again. And in the meantime, make sure you're with us on the internet. Facebook.com/Hail to the Hogs, YouTube.com/TheHogsty, and on Twitter @TheHogsty. We'll see you there. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.